Hi, welcome to my blog. My name is Tom Shue, and today we're going to do a beauty retouch. And I'm also going to show you some things that I do on images in general that help you define your subject. Okay, when you have an image and you look at it, you can see over here there's lots of bright areas. If you close your eyes and open them real quick, your eyes are, competing all over the scene. Obviously, there's a subject in here, but I mean, it's just really distracting over here. It's distracting over here. Our subject isn't the subject. The background, yes, it's rendered smoothly, but it's definitely a distracting element. So we need to focus our subject in the center of the frame. Well, not necessarily in the center of the frame, but they need to be the center of attention, I should say. So this is what we're going to do. First, we're going to start off by getting our image set up so she's the center of attention. So we're going to create a new layer. Okay, and in this layer, we're just going to grab a brush. We're going to create a vignette, but not like a normal vignette that I normally do. We're just going to paint one in, okay? So we're going to set our brush opacity at 100% and just come in here with a soft brush, okay? And just paint black, okay? Now, you want to be careful not to paint on your subject too much, okay? So just kind of come in and make an outline, close to him, and then you can resize your brush and go ahead and go back in. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and paint this in real quick. Alrighty, looking pretty good. Okay, and now we're going to take this and turn it to a blend mode called soft light. Alright, right off the bat, it's where there's some more bright areas, but we're drawn to her more. Okay? And if it's too much for you, you can back off. The opacity, this was before, and then, this will be somewhere where we're going to go. Okay. Now, also when we look at our subject, we'll see that there's not a lot of contrast in her face. She's looks like she might be a little underexposed in some of the areas, so I want to kind of brighten her up a little bit and add contrast at the same time. So I'm going to grab the lasso tool, and I'm just going to lasso around the subject. Okay, and if you don't get it exactly right, that's okay. We're going to use our brush tool on a layer mask to fix that. So we'll go to levels, okay, and you can see at this histogram there's no really a white point because it's completely open at 255, and at 0 there is a little bit of black, but we're going to increase that a little bit to get more contrast. Okay, so you can see what's happening. If we go too much, obviously, but so we're going to grab a black point here, and so that brings in our bottom end. That creates more contrast, and then we're also going to increase the white point a little bit. Bring it from the white point at 255. We're going to bring it somewhere around 236, and that's going to be different on every image. You just look at your histogram. You can see that over in this point, we're saying that this is the white point now. Okay, so we're going to go back to our layers, and we're going to grab a brush, hit the B key, and we're going to use this painting in black to go ahead and get rid of this transition between our subject and where that layer mask was, or the selection was. So we want a soft brush and just come in and paint in black and go over that area where we had the selection, kind of the gap in the selection. Okay, that looks pretty good. So the next thing we're going to do, okay, we're going to go ahead and create a new layer with all the information on it. So that's Control Alt Shift E on Windows or Command Option Shift E on Mac. That creates a new layer with all of that information. Now what I want to do, I want to zoom in and I want to look at my subject, and we're going to see that there's some kind of splotches going on in her face. There's like some gray here. There's some shadow on her nose, on her nostril, and there's not really a lot of contrast between the cheekbones and the sides of the mouth. So we want to go ahead and add in some highlights and shadow detail after we clean up the skin. So I'm going to go ahead and run portraiture. There's many ways to add skin softening and blending, one way you could blend is you could grab the patch tool and say this area right here that's kind of like a gray spotch. If you just drag it over there, you can see that we've eliminated that spotch. You can go through and grab these discolored areas on your subject and clean them up. Okay. Next thing we're going to do, let me zoom in a little bit more. Okay. And if you don't get it the first time, you can try moving your patch tool a few times, and you can work with that pretty well. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the clone stamp, and I'm going to clean up these dark areas under the eyes. See, she's got some dark areas. And I'm going to do that, but I'm going to sample on lighten. Okay. You would normally have your clone stamp on normal. We want to set it to lighten. Okay. And I'm going to grab an area where it's lighter. I don't want to sample from here. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, which is the Option key on the Mac, and sample there. And now I can just clean up some of this dark area under the eyes. Okay, so over here, we'll do the same thing. We're going to grab our area over here where it's brighter, and we're just going to come in and clean up some of that darker area under the eye. Okay, maybe we'll do that again over here, and just clean up a little bit of the dark area. Do the same thing on the shadow on the side of the nose. I'm going to just get rid of that real quick. If you mess up, Control Z, Command Z. And then I'm going to go ahead and clean up the all of in the splotchy stuff by running a skin softening plugin that I like to use called Portraiture. Clean up a little bit of that. Maybe we'll clean up a little bit on the side of the nose there. Alright. And some more splotchies over here. I'm just going to go ahead and clean up a little bit and try to make it more uniform. So when we run the skin softener, it will fix it. So I'm going to go back to the patch tool, and I'm just going to select a little bit right here. I'm just going to pull down just a little bit, slightly, maybe a little bit there. Control D, that helped us a little bit. And she's got some more over here in the mouth. It's kind of just splotchy. Control D to deselect. Alright, so we're looking pretty good there. That's before, and this is after. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and merge the layer. Actually, we'll just leave it the way it is. The file size is getting big, but I've got a lot of RAM. So Control Alt Shift E, Command Option Shift E to create a new layer, and we can delete the one below. All right. Now I want to run Portraiture. There's other skin softening plugins. If you look on my blog, you can see that there's other tutorials on how to do like high frequency skin softening, lots of ways, but I love to use Portraiture. It just works really good, and you know, it just speeds things up really well. So let's zoom in a little bit so we can see what's happening here. Now I like to use this mask preview, and you can see that how even her face is over here now. We're on medium. I'm going to come up here and go to default, and I'm going to grab my picker tool. This is to show you where you're going to be selecting. And if you look over here as I hover, it shows where the skin softening will be applied. So if I grab in the shadow areas, it's going to do more. And if I grab a highlight area, it's going to do less of the image. And if, you know, you can see that if I grab different areas, we'll get more information, like off of selecting a lot more. So let's come over here and we'll grab somewhere in this area. So we select that and we click OK, and it's going to run its thing. And now that's smoothed out a lot of the skin that wasn't necessarily smooth. Okay. However, I'm going to add a layer mask, and I'm going to take off with the brush tool Portraiture off the eyes and off the hair and just off the lips a little bit and stuff. So if we're going to be painting in black here, make sure we're at 100% opacity. And I'm just going to remove the layer mask from some of the areas, like this little thing here. She's really got some nice lips. Okay, I'll take it off the edge of the nose, around the sides of the nose. Maybe off some of these freckles. Okay, that looks pretty good. Zoom out a little bit here. So now I'm going to flatten the image. Actually, we'll just leave it the way it is. I'll make a new layer. And in this layer, this is where I'm going to put my highlight information. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to duplicate where I see highlights. All these highlights, I'm going to emphasize them more. Okay, so I'm going to grab my brush tool. I'm going to be painting with white. Okay, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more so I can work. And I'm just going to create a highlight spot on the cheek. Okay, and I'm going to create another highlight spot over here. Maybe a little bit on her chin. Let me redo that. I'm going to bring my opacity down. Somewhere around 20, 30 on this picture. Okay, so now I'm going to paint that highlight back in again. On her cheeks, on her chin, on her clavicles. Anywhere that you see a highlight, just come in and add it in, and we're just overemphasizing it. Maybe a little bit on her nose. Okay, now I'm going to take this layer, I'm going to put it on soft light. Okay, and I can blur this effect off so you can see that it looks like lighting. Okay, it doesn't look like we've applied very much, and if we want to add more in, we can just go back over it. You can increase your opacity some, and you can paint in your highlights. We're going to do the same thing for shadows. Okay, so we're going to create a new layer, and in this layer we're going to paint with black. So we hit the X key to flip our color chips, and same thing, we're going to come in here and we're going to emphasize the shadow areas. Maybe on the cheek right here, a little bit on this cheek. I double click there, so just right there. Did it again. Okay. I'm going to back off both of those. It's going to come right there on the height of the cheek. Same on this side. And a little bit of shadow there. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put this on soft light. Okay. And we can either use opacity to, blur, or opacity. So if we want to reduce the effect, you can just bring it in until the shadows increase more. You see her clavicles are more defined. However, I like to use blur. So we're going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and we're just blurring the shadow detail that we just created. Okay, that's with it off. So let's increase the blur until I like the way it looks on the cheek. That's completely off. Somewhere around there. So we select OK. Now zoom out. And now you can see that hard shadow that was on the clavicle actually just defines it. So we'll turn off that detail. There's the highlights we added. Looks like natural lighting. And then the shadow detail we added. Sucked in her cheeks and it popped out her clavicles. Alright. So we're getting somewhere now. Let's zoom out and take a look. Now, if we look like we've done too much when you make the image small, you can come in and grab your opacity and slide it down. So that was the shadow detail. The shadow doesn't look too much, but the highlights might be a little much. So I'm going to go ahead and blur those as well. So let's zoom back in, and I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and this is on our highlights layer. So this is with it off. Maybe blur it somewhere. That's looking pretty good. Maybe somewhere around there. Now this would be if you were zooming in, somewhere around here. If you're going to be doing a large print, this is how far you'd look to see how the image is going to look on a wall. if you're doing stuff for web, this stuff here, when you zoom out small, you can see if she looks like an alien, then you've done it too much. Now I've noticed one other thing that I don't like, which is this eye socket. It looks a little bit too dark. So I'll show you a trick to deal with that. So we're going to go Control-Alt-Shift-E. We're going to make a new layer with everything. Okay, and now we're going to turn this. We're going to duplicate the layer. Control-J, and I'm going to turn this one into screen. And you see how that did that shadow, that eye socket area? So what we're going to do is we're going to hold down the Alt key, and that's the Option key on the Mac. We're going to hit a layer mask. And now I'm just going to go in and I'm going to paint with a brush with white on this layer mask over the shadow area that I don't like, underneath the eyes a little bit. Maybe on the side of the nose. If you don't like it, just back it off. Okay, so now we'll use our opacity tool to, set how we want that to look. So there's before and after of that area around the nose, and I still think it's a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint with black. I'm going to flip the chips and I'm going to remove this over here and just let the effect work right there on the side of the nose. Okay. So that'll about do it. So now we have kind of like a high fashion image that she's the center of attention. And we'll look at before and after. Just close all this off. That's what we'll do. Let's go to the top. Control Alt Shift E, Command Option Shift E to get everything on a new layer. Just has to be turned on. We'll just turn it on everything. And then I'll just get rid of everything in between the two. So we have the before and the after. So one's more high fashion, less distracting. Your eye goes to your subject, and before, where she's got real splotchy skin in the background, kind of is real distracting. So I want to thank you all for taking time to visit my blog today. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the section below. Until next time, we'll see you soon.